B2B marketing teams rely on eMarketer Media Solutions to elevate their thought leadership and build meaningful relationships through exclusive webinars, guides, infographics, and more, if you can believe it. Visit eMarketer.com/advertise to learn more about our proven approach.
The misalignment is actually getting worse. Marketers are heading to CTV, consumers are heading to CTV. Both lines are heading in the right direction, but it's like the gap is getting wider because we are all spending so much more time with our CTVs and our streaming services as compared to the amount of money that's starting to go there from marketers.
Hey gang, it's Thursday, August 29. Ethan and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast. I'm Marcus. Today I'm joined by our principal forecasting writer. He's based in New York City. It's Ethan Kramer-Flood.
Hello, Marcus, and hello, people of media and advertising. I'm excited to be.
And others, everyone.
And everyone else, too. Yeah, anyone who's listening.
Today's fact is where we start. What are the most common city names in America?
Oh, my God.
You know
I was not prepared. Springfield. There
you go. So these cities that I'm going to tell you first, they're cities with over 20,000 residents. So not the tiny ones, but Springfield and Columbus both have, 5 of each of those across America. There are a further 9 city names with 4 replicas across the country. So Newark, Albany, Lafayette, Lancaster, Lakewood, shout out. There are a few of those 9.
Lafayette, I like that.
But Springfield, Massachusetts, founded in 1636, was named after an Essex town in England. This was noted by Pallavi Rao of Visual Capitalists. And since then, over 30 places in America of any size this is now have been named Springfield. So 5 over 20,000 people, but 30 if you count everything. And thus its ubiquity, resulting in it being picked as a Simpsons hometown. So Springfield is the most common place name in America when you look at all towns and cities. Never been to one though.
Yeah, I don't know if I have either.
Now I want to.
Springfield, Mass. Maybe?
One per state. Anyway, today's real topic: the relationship between where folks spend their time and the ad dollars that are trying to reach them. So, Ethan, our wonderful forecasting crew, of which you're a part of, you look at a lot of things, but 2 things in particular we're going to talk about for this episode: where folks spend their time and where advertisers spend their dollars. And so when you overlay these 2 metrics on top of each other, you can see if advertisers are spending their money in the places where folks are spending their time. That's roughly the exercise, correct?
Let me set the stage with a couple of caveats. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes discussing these misalignments, these imbalances, as we call them. And they are, by definition, intriguing. This is why we did this, to pull out these conclusions of where it could be interpreted that marketers are over-investing their dollars as compared to where consumers are spending the time, or perhaps you could interpret it the other way. They're under-investing as compared to consumer behavior. Mm-hmm. And so social media comes out right at the top of that. We're going to talk about it right off the top. But this is food for thought. The imbalances that we're going to discuss exist for a reason. Like, there are strong legacy explanations for why a lot of this stuff has happened over time. So we're not saying, oh, this is a huge error. This is a problem. This needs to be addressed. What we're saying is, let's take a look at, yes, there's a reason that a whole lot of money has gone over here and not over there as compared to what people are doing. But let's give it another look. Use this as an input for your next strategy session, the next time you're sitting around thinking about this stuff, because consumer behavior continues to change. Yeah. And just because an imbalance existed in the past, well, what if we tell you that imbalance is getting worse? What if things are starting to shift one way or the other more than maybe has been expected or more than has existed in the past? So
quickly on to that point, just add something really quickly to that. If the imbalance is maintained, it means that there's probably reasons why, right? However, if you're seeing the gaps closing, if you're seeing ad spend catch up with time spent or vice versa, then you're seeing kind of a market correction. And, that means that advertisers are slow to spend their dollars where people are spending more of their time, or it means that advertisers are overspending where people aren't spending that much time. So it's interesting to go look at the research and see how these trend lines are moving, because if the gap's closing at any point, it means that there's a market correction.
It's shifting year by year, or it could mean a bunch of different things. It could mean that the platforms or the channels in general are doing a better job making themselves attractive to marketers. But yeah, it could also mean that consumers are shifting and maybe marketers are responding, maybe they're not responding. So each one of these is sort of its own thing, and we'll get into that a little bit.
Sometimes things line up. There's spending time where people are spending ad dollars. Sometimes there are extreme imbalances. And so we're going to look at where ad dollars outweighed time outweighed ad dollars, where it matched up, where they were balanced, and some other interesting findings from the research. We'll start though, Ethan, with where ad dollars outweighed time spent the most. Where was this?
Really, the overwhelming answer to that is social media in general and Meta's property specifically. So just as an example to tee this up, Americans, US adults spend about 18% of their time with digital media per day on social media, but social media is collecting nearly 30% of digital ad dollars, right? So we're saying, oh, wow, a whole lot of extra money over, above, and beyond where people are actually spending their time is flooding into social media. And then that in turn is overwhelmingly because of Facebook and Instagram, right? With Facebook and Instagram collectively, Meta draws about 75% of all digital ad dollars going to social media, but they only draw about 40% of people's time with social media. So no matter whether you slice it sort of at a general national level for all ad spending or whether you slice it within social media, you're seeing this real disproportionate gap that we don't really see anywhere else, in as much as way, way, way more money goes to social media than the amount of time that people actually spend on social media, right? You might think that we all spend all of our time all day long on social media, but we really don't. It's by far not the most common way that people consume media. We consume a whole bunch of different other types of media, a lot more than we consume social media. And yet the reverse is the case for where the ad dollars are flowing.
Yeah. And those last numbers that you cited were social network dollars and social network time in particular. But you zoom out a bit and you have a number that's looking at digital ad spend versus media time. And you say Meta drawing a larger share of US digital ad spend, 21% of digital ad spend going to Meta, given the share of digital media time that goes to Meta, which is about 8%. So 21% ad dollars, 8% time. That translates to about 36 minutes, as you say, per day. But looking ahead, Ethan, something else you point out I thought was interesting is social network time has leveled off. Yes. You point out, and social network ad spending continues to grow 16% this year. You say 11% next year.
Yeah, and I was going to circle back to this, but the social media, unlike everything else we're going to discuss today, the trend lines in social are actually heading in opposite directions. So we're going to identify some other misalignments on CTV and streaming services and television. But in social media, advertisers are actually spending more and more and more. The dollar growth is still high, whereas people are starting to drift away. You've peaked and people are spending less time. So if you can imagine two lines on a chart, one of them is going up and the other one's going down, they're getting further and further away, whereas some of the other misalignments are more about pacing.
Yeah, which is time spent outweighing ad dollars the most. I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, having read the research, but where did you land on this answer?
Yeah, so the answer to this one is CTV and streaming services in general, and then Netflix specifically, right? Indeed. So in this case, we're showing the opposite phenomenon where consumers, and this is no surprise, I'm not breaking news here, we all love our CTV. We all have been transitioning very, very heavily to watching digital entertainment services on our CTV. That's mostly streaming, but also digital audio, any kind of digital video, YouTube, whatever you might be watching. So we as a society are already spending about 18% of our time with our CTVs, on the fast track to 20% in a couple of years. But CTV overall is only drawing just over 7% of all advertising. And when you get down into the actual streaming services, particularly Netflix, it's even worse. Like, we spend a ton of time with these streaming services, but they're getting very, very small amount of the overall, whether you're talking at a national scale of all ad spending or digital ad spending, or even within streaming ads, the imbalance is significant. Now, as I mentioned at the top, there are legacy reasons for this, right? A lot of the streaming services started out not having ad tiers at all. So marketers had to watch helplessly as we all shifted our behavioral patterns and started watching these things, and they couldn't actually put ads in front of us. They couldn't spend their money now, but that's old news, right? So now CTV, the cat's out of the bag. CTV ad spending has for years and years and years been among the highest growth metrics that we track. Billions and billions are shifting over to CTV, but it's just nowhere close to as much as people are. Right. So this is that sort of, the direction is the same, but the misalignment is actually getting worse. Marketers are heading to CTV. Consumers are heading to CTV. Both lines are heading in the right direction, but it's like the gap is getting wider because we are all spending so much more time with our CTVs and our streaming services as compared to the amount of money that's starting to go there for marketers.
So I want to touch quickly on exactly what you're saying just now, which is nearly a quarter. So these are the numbers that you were referring to, I believe. 23% of people's media time will be watching subscription OTT services, streaming services, but the medium will be allocated less than 4% of digital advertisers' budgets. And that gap is growing somewhat.
It's growing. Yep.
To your point about we moved to streaming and advertisers couldn't get to us for a lot of the streaming services, I assume you're talking about Netflix here, because when you look at Netflix, if you zoom in on the subscription OTT space, Netflix accounts for 32% of the streaming time, but just 8% of the ad dollars. Hulu is almost the exact opposite, I'm assuming because Hulu offered advertising before Netflix.
Yeah. I was going to get to Hulu later. We have a couple of... We have a couple of examples of platforms that are sort of outperforming in a positive way. But for the most part, it's the reverse. For the most part is, particularly among sub-OTT streaming, CTV in general, that's like the sort of parent category, and then the sub-OTT streaming services underneath that. They both show that same pattern of drawing lots and lots of time, but not drawing the ad. And, Netflix has an excuse, just to speak for Netflix, right? They're like, hey, man, we didn't offer advertising until very, very recently.
Right.
But they're off to a slow start, and it's going to take a really long time before they get even close to sort of balancing that gap.
It's a chasm, yeah. I mean, to zoom right out, if you're looking at total ad spend and total media time, you note Americans spending over 7% of total media time on Netflix. 7% of all media time going to Netflix. Advertisers only committing 0.3% of their digital ad budgets to the streaming giant.
They barely register despite being one of the three biggest time-consuming companies in the country.
We've talked about ad dollars outweighing time outweighing ad dollars. Where are both most balanced? Where are the dollars and the time lining up?
Yeah, so there's two big examples where things are relatively close, and that's YouTube and TikTok. So I mentioned that, Meta in the social media space, Meta overwhelmingly over-indexes on how much ad dollars they're drawing in compared to the amount of time. But TikTok is still one of the heavy hitters. TikTok gets, people spend more time with TikTok even than Instagram, not quite as much as Facebook. And they do a good job. They're drawing at a national scale, pulling beyond just social media, national scale, TikTok getting 3.6% of people's time and 3.4% of ad dollars. That's about as balanced as you're going to find anywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
YouTube gets a lot more time. I know we consider TikTok to be this huge, huge time-consuming product, but that's really among its own users. When you think about YouTube as a much higher scale, right? Because almost everyone in the country uses YouTube, but that's not actually the case for TikTok. YouTube gets as much time as Meta's properties all put together, and Netflix is right there too. And YouTube has drawn over 5% of ad dollars while getting just over 7% of our time. So these two have, for various different reasons, produced relatively balanced outcome. I'm sure both of them would rather be in Meta's position, getting a huge, it's all well and good to get people's time. But from the perspective of these platforms, other than maybe Netflix, which has a different strategy, and Spotify, which has a slightly different strategy. But for most of these platforms, they'd rather be in Meta's position where they're heavily over-indexing on how much ad money they're drawing as compared to the time.
To zoom in on that for a second, you were talking about overall, when in the piece as well, you look at social network ad dollars specifically, and that's where the imbalance seems to come out there, because you've got Facebook and Instagram taking about 37% of social network ad dollars each, 37% each roughly, and about 21% of social network time. TikTok is basically the same slice of time, about 20%, but way smaller in terms of its share of social network ad pie with about 12%.
Yeah, we calculate everything on a national level and then in category by category. And either way, you kind of get the same story. But Meta's disproportionate domination.
Yeah.
Actually, it comes out no matter how you look at it.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's TikTok, but they're also Snapchat, Reddit, X. They all have a much smaller shares of social network ad spend versus time spent for social networks. All right, the other most interesting finding from your research, what else jumped out to you about where people spend their time and where advertisers spend their dollars?
Yeah, I was just going to throw out, I mean, you had mentioned Hulu. I was going to mention the two platforms that do sort of manage to overperform dollars versus time spent. No one does it like Meta overall, but Hulu and Peacock actually overperform on ad spending as compared to time spent. And again, that's like a legacy reason, right? These are the two streaming platforms that were ad-centric since the beginning. When you think about Hulu, they've been around a long time, actually. And right off the bat, everyone is used to seeing ads on Hulu. Their archive of entertainment shows are overwhelmingly traditional television programs that were built to have ads anyway. Hulu started off having all these options, ad tiers, cost less, pay more to get your ads. And then Peacock sort of started, they're much younger. They started out the same way. And it's worked out for both of them. Both of them heavily within the sub-OTT category, within the streaming category. Both of them get a heck of a lot more advertising dollars than they do time spent. Hulu performs well in both, but they get a lot more of their share of the streaming ad pie goes heavily more to Hulu and to Peacock as compared to their time spent, both of which are just nowhere close to Netflix. But it's a different strategy, right? I mean, this is how they started out. And Netflix and Disney Plus and Max wish that they had sort of started this way, because now it's like this huge priority to draw in ad dollars. But Hulu and Peacock were doing this the whole time, and now it's really paying off because they're in a good position when in this new world of advertising heavy streaming.
Yeah, that one jumped out to me as well. Peacock, 13% of subscription OTT ad dollars versus just 4% of the share of the subscription OTT time. There's entirely too much more in this report that Ethan just put together. Just came out, US ad spending versus time spent 2024. What are the most intriguing imbalances between marketer expenditures and consumer behavior this year? Link in the show notes, or if you're a Pro Plus subscriber, of course, you can head to emarketer.com to get access to it that way. That is all we have time for today's episode. But thank you so much, Ethan, for hanging out with me today.
My pleasure. Let's do it again.
Yes, sir. We will indeed do it again tomorrow. So thank you for letting me steal you for 2 episodes this week. Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Stuart runs the team. Sophie does our social media. And thanks to everyone for listening. And we hope to see you tomorrow for that very episode. The Behind the Numbers weekly listen. It's now an eMarketer video podcast, so you can watch on YouTube to see our faces and charts of some of the data we use, or you can, of course, listen to it the usual way.